Welcome to a Superbloom podcast. I am thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to sit down with today's guest, Lizz Winstead. Lizz is the founder and chief creative officer of Abortion Access Front, as well as one of the top political satirists working today. As co-creator and head writer of Comedy Central's The Daily Show, she forever changed the way people get their news. In 2004, Winstead also co-founded Air America Radio while co-hosting Unfiltered every morning with the amazing Rachel Maddow and hip-hop legend Chuck D. But now with Abortion Access Front, Winstead has taken her satirical brilliance one step further, combining it with her passion for reproductive rights to expose anti-choice hypocrisy and inspiring a whole new model of activism. I don't want to waste any time. Let's just jump right in. Everyone, welcome to my conversation with Lizz Winstead. The last time we spoke, I can't believe I was a woman, or just a uterus owning person in the world that ever thought like, oh, but Roe v. Wade would never really get overturned. Like, that's just like, I genuinely in my bones was naive enough to think. And which also just shows like what that can say a lot of things about just like the things I was choosing to focus on or how much I was actually tuning in, privilege, all of the above. And yet here we are, just like a year and a half later, basically. And holy moly, Lizz. Holy moly.
Candice, I think all those things are true. And I think all of us experience them to that extent. But also, I want to say, like, I don't know that I could have gotten up every day had I known humanity and people were this determined to destroy people's lives.
Yeah.
Even I, who work on this every day and have for years, didn't really understand the level of depravity that was in the belly of people who, the second they were given the opportunity to strip people of their humanity in a way that they have been doing for years. You talk to people of color, they're like, yeah, they've been stripping our humanity for years. Look at, like, that's why Black Lives Matter. It's like, that's why we say it. But even I was stunned. And I think even folks that do this work were like, wow, we concentrated so hard on a playbook and now we just COVID threw all the rules out the window. And then these people threw out the rules out the window. And I guess the thing that I think of the most is I look at the women of Iran and I see them in the streets under risk of execution. And I don't see us in the streets. Why are we not in the streets?
I don't know. I really don't know. I remember where we're I know.
Candice, you must tell me why.
I'll tell you, Lizz. No, I've been in the streets. I've been out protesting recently for just gun safety laws here. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and we had a horrible, awful, devastating school shooting a couple weeks ago. And it's gotten me more involved in local politics than I've ever been in my entire life. And it is really unfortunate. I don't know why there hasn't, like, I remember I was on a plane. I was on a plane last year and flying home from a trip with my kids, and I was holding she wasn't quite yet 2, and I was holding my daughter who was sleeping on me, and all the TVs were on either Fox or CNN, but they were all saying the same things for once, saying that Roe v. Wade was overturned. And I just remember just tears streaming down my face, exiting the plane, and like not being able to stop crying, looking at just like how it was just so everywhere you looked, it was just so many devastated people. And
holding your
little girl.
Like, what is your future?
And it's so, and I remember even just sitting there going, like, I'm in Tennessee, and I knew that Tennessee was up for, like, the state would then decide that everything could be different. And I just moved here, and like I then also wondered, oh my gosh, like what, I don't even have an OB here yet. I don't have a gynecologist here. What happens now? And it was wild even just to be calling around different offices and trying to get an appointment. Everyone was booked. Everyone's freaking out. Everyone's trying. It just really just kind of knocked the wind out of me. And yet I still didn't put up a sale and get out there and protest, really.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. And Tennessee right now is one of the worst states for OBGYN care. There has been really devastating stories coming out of Tennessee of people who have almost died, who haven't been able to get the care they need. And, we've talked to doctors who have left because they can't provide the care that they need in Tennessee. And the other thing that a lot of people aren't talking about is doctors who are living in Tennessee, who provide care or have provided abortion care, are afraid to go to the doctor in Tennessee because there's so many anti-abortion doctors that they're afraid they might not get good care. So that's another level of how far the onion peels down to who's afraid, why people are afraid. It feels very troubling. But I also want to say too that like we get the government that we participate in choosing, and so the more that we activate and demand, we've seen these ballot initiatives be very successful in states that have very gerrymandered districts, that have been carved up and set up for a minority rule over the majority. And so I think we really need to play into the better nature of humanity and start getting those ballot initiatives going, letting the people say what they want. And then if politicians are going to continue to, after a state, you watched in Kansas overwhelmingly voted to make sure that abortions remained in their constitution, that was their constitutional right as Kansans. And even after that overwhelming vote, the anti-abortion forces in the Kansas legislature passed more horrible laws. The governor vetoed them, but they had veto power over the governor. So it's also an education point where it's like, I'm not sure people understand that the same people they're voting for are the ones making the laws that are bad.
That's what I think a lot of it is. Because when I hear, Roe v. Wade overturned, I think, oh, that's like a whole other higher level. How would I even start to participate in in fixing that or, having a stance against that. And then and it was all very confusing because then it went to the state level. Is there a way that you could possibly explain to our listeners who maybe don't understand just like a very simple, if possible, some sort of simple version of basically how Roe v. Wade was overturned and why it went to the state level?
Yeah. I think a lot of people think that Roe v. Wade happened because of like Congress people or because of federal laws. I'm going to clear my throat. But what I think that a lot of people don't understand is the abortion bans that happen in a state by state basis are the ones that get pushed through a court system. And then the Supreme Court decides whether or not they'll take a case or not. And so how Roe v. Wade got overturned was there was a Mississippi law that was a 15-week abortion ban. And it was when the people who wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade, they're very smart. So they're looking at all these states, and what they want to do is they create legislation, these big political money organizations. They literally write the laws and then they hand them to a state that they know it can get passed in. And oftentimes they'll choose a state that is in a district in the United States where the court system that it has to weave through to get to the Supreme Court is also super, super anti-abortion, right? So they chose Mississippi because they passed a law that was unconstitutional because what Roe v. Wade said was, we have in America the right to abortion to 24 weeks. And anything after that, the states can decide. And so a challenge to that was this 15-week ban, because if the law of the land is you can have an abortion up to this point in your pregnancy, anything lower than that would be against the constitutionality of Roe v. Wade, right? So Mississippi passes a law that's 15 weeks, and Mississippi knew it would be challenged by people who wanted to keep Roe v. Wade intact. And so they went through a court system that said, well, I don't know. Maybe 15 weeks is fine. I think maybe the Supreme Court should decide.
Knowing that the Supreme Court is now a majority Republican. Yeah.
And based on nothing, this 15-week, all of this, it's all very arbitrary about pregnancy. But we do know that a pregnancy at 15 weeks is not a developed anything. It is not a viable pregnancy. And even the line that they created in Roe v. Wade was arbitrary, because gestational age in pregnancy, a lot of folks don't get it, that it's sort of like puberty. People go through it in different stages. It's different for every pregnancy. There's not a foolproof thing. And as far as we have come in modern medicine, in gynecology, and when we talk about pregnancy, we still rely on somebody being able to tell their doctor when their last menstrual period was, right?
When you take a test, that's what you base your entire pregnancy off of. It's impossible. No one knows the exact moment of conception. You base your entire due date off of when you're the start-ish of your last period was.
And so just knowing that, you already see well, there's always going to be wavering around that, and making decisions like everyone has their same kind of period. Everybody's regular. Everybody's
cycle,
everything.
Same
it's
day.
not.
Yes,
Anyway,
exactly.
I totally veered off your
this
question.
This is important information. These are in my follow-up questions, because this is something that's been irking me, especially with this 6-week
Yes, and we'll get to that in a minute. So the Mississippi case, the thing that's very interesting is, even in the most conservative courts that this went through, they said it's not constitutional because we have Roe v. Wade. So your law is not constitutional. So they went to two different courts, the Mississippi State Supreme Court and then the Fifth Circuit Court. And they both said, this law isn't constitutional. And the Attorney General of Mississippi said, I still want the Supreme Court to hear this anyway. And normally what happens is the Supreme Court normally won't take a case unless there's a controversy in separate rulings. So let's say the Mississippi State Supreme Court said, this is unconstitutional, but the next court that it would go to, this Fifth Circuit, said, no, said the opposite. Then it would go to the Supreme Court to sort of call the balls and the strikes and sort of lay it out. But there was no controversy because everybody said this law is clearly unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court took it anyway. And so that just shows the politicization of this Supreme Court. And the fact that they said what they ruled was Roe v. Wade was argued when it was argued. And it said that doctors have a right to perform, actually, and that your right to abortion is protected in the 14th Amendment, that you, a living person, have the right to control your own healthcare decisions in the 14th Amendment. And because the actual word abortion isn't mentioned, they don't say abortion, they say you have the decision to control your own body with what you want to do. Living people. That's what they said, living people in the Constitution. So because the word abortion wasn't in the Constitution, the conservative justices said, well, it doesn't specifically say in the Constitution, and we're very strict about what the Constitution says. And then Clarence Thomas added to that when he wrote his opinion and said, it's an opportunity for us to revisit birth control, gay marriage, because those things are also not specifically said in the Constitution. Neither is Viagra, but I digress. There's a lot of words that are not in the Constitution that I would like to just bring up,
It's
if
important.
I could, for a moment.
That's important to note.
Yes. And then, yes. So then they rule. And so Brett Kavanaugh wrote a side thing that said, see, this is how it should go. We should just bring this back to the states and let the states decide. And on something as crucial as controlling your own body and humanity, that shouldn't be a state by state decision. I feel like that's a decision of our nation, and that we should all feel 100% that all of us should never have anybody deciding what our fate is, our destiny, our humanity, our capacities for parenting. You know, you're a parent. Do you have 2 kids?
4 between their dad and I have stepdaughters, and then 2 biological children. Yes, all girls.
And so you're parenting 4 girls. Mm-hmm. That is not easy. It's really hard. And to decide someone else should be able to parent 4 girls, or that everyone should have to, it just seems ludicrous. And yet here we are. Yeah. If somebody says, I literally cannot parent a child in a way that child deserves, why would you force them to do so? Why would you? I simply don't understand
it too.
It seems cruel.
Especially in a world that is where children, the number one way that children are dying is by guns. We're sending kids to school with active shooter drills, and we're supposed to, and this is like coming from like a pro-life society, in sending children to school, practicing on how to avoid an active shooter. We have no support system for birthing people that actually have children, as far as recovery, medical expenses, any form of support after birth care, in any sort of child care. It is very difficult. It's very expensive. There's no support system. So it's just the level of expectation for forced birth, and yet there is nothing on the other side of that actually that is set up for the children nor the person giving birth, except just like a lot of times just you're on your own, or just failure. You're set up for failure, really. And also, what blows my mind is just that at this point, I think that, for me, I'll say, when I was young and the notion of abortion that what I grasped of abortion was, abortion is something that happens when someone gets pregnant. They're probably going to be a teenager, or they're going to be like a girl in college and they like don't want to have a baby, so they have an abortion. I'm now in my 30s and know very well enough, that is not like only what abortion is. Abortion is actually health care, because pregnancy is so terrifying, and there are how often there are miscarriages, or it is a life-threatening, possible birth, or life-threatening to the parent to carry this child to term. And now that is all being taken away. I mean, what makes me also just to keep rolling with it. I mean, I'm ill. I'm physically ill that anyone had the audacity to include rape and incest are negligible when it comes to allowing for abortions here in the state of Tennessee, including Texas, including many, many other states in this country. The fact that someone had the audacity to say, no, even for a rape victim, no, even for incest, no, just makes me ill.
Well, and also like statistically, 60% of all abortions are from people who are already parenting 1 or more children, right? And then when you look at the very muddied, when they do have exceptions for rape and incest, the muddied way that they have said, if you perform abortions in the state, you'll lose your medical license, you'll go to jail for 10 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. And then when they say like, okay, you can have an abortion, but you have to be basically dying in front of a doctor for them to help you, to force somebody get to a point where they say, go sit in your car. And if you start bleeding out, then we can help you. But until then, the intervention is legally questionable. You know, we lost a physician this week, Dr. Carhart, who performed later abortions in very tragic cases for people who, and he was in med school, and he said, I was in med school and I was doing my rounds in the emergency room, and this was in the pre-Roe v. Wade times, and he said, and I was seeing patients who were dying from self-attempted abortion before there was pills and before it was safe. And he had a friend who begged him for 2 years to come and practice. And he said it took him 2 years, but he went to a clinic in Nebraska and followed in the rounds of this doctor. And he said, and when I realized that I was seeing the same women that I saw in the emergency rooms, but in 30 minutes, I could provide them a safe abortion and they didn't die. I knew that was my life's work because it was the same people, the same women with the same circumstances, and they could safely make that choice instead of having to die. And why you would put anybody to that position where they have to choose or they have to suffer so profoundly and beg to say, please believe me, I'm dying. Can you help me? And have a doctor be too afraid to intervene. And then to have politicians like Marsha Blackburn say, I think that doctor should be commended for not breaking the law. It's like the laws are killing people. And the doctors who know that they want to do this work are terrified to do so. They're terrified to save people because they'll get thrown in jail and lose their licenses. The cruelty is the point. It just is the point.
It is more often than not that I know someone who has had a miscarriage than not. You know, this is now finally, I feel like people are talking about miscarriage.
1 in 5 pregnancies end in miscarriage.
Yes. And it's very common. It is, but it also can go wrong. And so to even have to go through that experience with some sort of dignity and support and have that be ripped away now and questioned, it just... Okay, so that we can go on and on and on about all the things that make us ill, but this is where I want to fire everyone up who's listening right now, or
let's pivot to some good things you can do.
What we can do, because you're right. I don't want us to just like lose wind in our sails and be like, oh, well, that's the thing that happened, and I guess this is just the world now. No. This is when we must come together as a community, support one another, and support those who need our help around us. So how do we do that?
So we at Abortion Access Front really wanted to be able to create programs and activism that could meet you where you're at. So if you have 10 minutes to give, if you're somebody who is a little bit more passive and might want to like be involved in helping with patient care, maybe you're somebody who wants to take to the streets and be loud, or maybe you're somebody who really wants to like do legislative work. We created a program called Operation Save Abortion, and you can go to operationsaveabortion.com. And we did this series of really wonderful conversations with the experts in all these different forms of activism. And we created toolkits for folks to like watch a 45-minute conversation. We recommend watching these with your friends, and then doing the work, doing the toolkit with your friends. We have prompt questions. We have a little bit of activism in each of the toolkits, so you can get a little taste of whether it's patient care, clinic care, direct action, taking to the streets advocacy, legislative work, and then learning about reproductive justice and how Black women are really leading this movement and how we need to really center Black and brown folks in the movement. And you can kind of get this really interesting overview with your peeps, talking about it, seeing where people are at. And then you can figure out where you want to hang your hat. And here's the cool part. Then you sign up with us and we can put you locally with groups on the ground where you live in whatever state you're in and hook you up with people who are doing work in your community. Because maybe you're not an organizer, but you want to help out when you find out there's a thing. Maybe you can show up. Maybe you can bake cookies. Maybe everybody's going to the city council meeting and you can just be a body there. Like there's a million ways. We have an activist calendar at operationsaveabortion.com so you can pick. And then you can also participate in national actions too. So you can kind of pick your poison. And the cool thing is, half of my team lives in Tennessee.
Really?
I have 3 people in Memphis. I have a person in Knoxville and a person in Bristol. Yeah. So, it's, we want to be in states where people are the hardest hit, where people can also, mobilize and get to other places, quickly. You can get to Atlanta. You can get around. And so Operation Save Abortion is a really good starter for you to get your feet wet, learn a little bit, hear some things, try out the stuff in our toolkit and see what you like, and then decide you want to do it. And then you sign up right there in the volunteer sheet. We'll put your name in the database, and then we will hook you up with the folks who need help in your community and folks that you can actively work with. I think it's super important. And then also we have a podcast every Friday. That's the only podcast out there that talks about, it gives you a recap of the week's news around all these issues and then gives you some actions to take. And we have the best experts in the areas around this. And then we just have some comedy on for fun because we all need a little bit of a break after these really intense conversations.
I just love it because even what I appreciate, even at Abortion Access Front on the website, you can go to different states and see how you can support a clinic. And even here in Tennessee, where obviously there are no clinics at this point, there is still an organization here that is helping fund for anyone that needs support in getting across state lines, that needs travel funds, that needs that support. And it just makes it... it is something actionable. I saw you on the Daily Show recently, and I just loved your term emotional fluffer. And that is exactly I think that's what you said. Oh, anger fluffer. That's what it is. Anger fluffer.
Anger fluffer.
But I just loved that because sometimes that is how I feel. I get on social media and I'm just reposting and reposting and reposting. And I'm like, no, I need boots on the ground. I need to do something.
It's so crucial because you will not be able to get out of bed if you don't have something to do. Activism really is self-care. And it doesn't mean that you're the person that needs to be out on the street and doing XYZ. We need people out on the street, obviously. But if you're the person who is calling your politician and saying, I live here and this is what I think, and you represent me, if that's a thing you can do, if it's even just making cookies for the rally, if it's helping people set up chairs at the event they're doing, there's a million ways that you can help. And it's super crucial to tap in for your own sanity, as well as, because as we know, movement doesn't happen, especially in the political part, unless they see that citizens are saying, I will not vote for you if you are this person. And I will work very hard to make sure that you no longer have this job. And I think they need to believe that we're serious. They're very used to us not showing up. And I think that now that we're showing up and we're shaking up a system that was not built for us, let's be honest, if you're a woman or if you're queer or if you're Black and brown, we weren't involved in laying this foundation. We just weren't. And the people that want to keep this foundation, they rely on decorum and they rely on all these things that are just code words for you shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna dole out to you your freedoms, and then you take them, and then you be grateful for them.
Yeah.
And so
the word decorum that I've hearing the word decorum over and over and over in these last couple of weeks, I'm just I have a very new opinion on that word decorum.
Yeah. Especially in Tennessee, where decorum has been just code for just some real racist shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Was there a moment in you? I mean, how many years have you been really focusing your attention and efforts on abortion access?
I've always had my hand in it. I had an abortion in high school. And so I've always had my sort of hand in it, realizing that it is the gift that gave me, my ability to get on stage and be a comedian. I co-created The Daily Show. I've been very lucky and privileged because I was able to have a destiny path that was my own. And so, but I really did, I did a reevaluation. I don't know if your listeners remember, but back when Wendy Davis was in Texas, and Wendy Davis was a state representative who filibustered for 13 hours in pink sneakers when Texas tried to pass horrible anti-abortion laws of like 11 or 12 years ago. And I watched her fight, and I watched that, and I did some research, and I realized that as I was watching Wendy Davis fight these laws, that 26 other states had the exact bunch of laws because they were written by really rich lobbyists, and they dumped them in 26 other states and nobody knew about it. And so I just finished writing my book, and I needed a new chapter in my life. And I was like, what if I try to combine the way that The Daily Show exposes hypocrisy and does it well with an activism component? And how can I make that work? And so it was back then that I just wanted to combine all the creativeness, take the art, take the entertainers, have the influencers, and really start building platforms to talk about this, and then meeting all of the folks doing the work on the ground so that I could pivot people to where the work was happening in their communities. And so here we are now, about 10 years later, with a really strong machine that can get people to where they need to go.
Did you ever have a moment of just exhaustion and wonder if you needed to pass the baton and just...
I mean, I think I am exhausted, and I think that in the next few years, I definitely will be passing the baton. But I think that because we lived in a society for so long where we didn't talk about it, those of us with the wisdom and who were following it all along, I think that we need to stay in the game a little bit longer to make sure that the historical knowledge is passed on so that people are considering everything as they move forward with new ideas. And so I'm going to be in the game for a while. I think I'll be in the game forever on some level, advising, being it, you can't keep me out of these streets. I'm always around being loud and hopefully being a little bit fun.
Very fun. Always fun. How was the experience for you on the front lines of abortion access and abortion rights? What have you seen for this younger generation coming up? Because just in these couple weeks here in Nashville, Tennessee, I just can't get over how in awe I am of these young kids that are not only going, that I keep saying, it's not that they're going to change the world. They are currently changing the world right now. And holy moly, I was not, when I was their age in high school and even in my 20s, I was not paying attention at all.
When you look at the Justins, right? And from Tennessee, I'm sure your listeners know the Justins. Okay.
Jones and Pearson.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So when you listen to them talk about what they were told and how they were supposed to be as young people, it's the same thing that young abortion activists have also been told. Do you have to say the word abortion? It makes people uncomfortable. Can we talk about it in a different way? Where can you compromise? And it's like, I can't. They won't. We won't anymore. Abortion is not a dirty word. And the playbook that has been given to us has not worked. And full emancipation means our full humanity. And that means full access to reproductive care. And we will settle for nothing less. And so I think that when you look at the movement for Black lives and the movement for trans lives, and you look at reproductive health rights and justice, there is no place to say, yeah, you can have a little bit of my rights if that makes you feel comfortable, because nobody deserves a little bit of anyone's rights. You deserve full rights for everything, from your skin on in. And so I think the young people are just saying, no, we're not apologizing.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it in a way that you understand that abortion and birth control, it just deserves its proper place in a long list of medical things that someone will probably use in their lifetime. and let's normalize it and let's put it there. And we have a lot of work to do to get to that. And I also know that we're never going to convince everybody that it's okay.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is,
But what I also think because I think about that a lot. Like, I can't, like, my brain just doesn't operate in a way that goes, oh yeah, pro-life versus pro-choice. That makes it like, it's not my business. That's not my body. I don't know that person's circumstances. That is up to them. And hopefully, hopefully they are safe and loved and cared for and able to, like, that's my whole understanding of just like how abortion care should be. And but I've tried to think, like, it is such a personal thing based on such personal experiences or personal things that we were taught from those who are around us. But then that brings me right back to, it is personal and it's nobody else's business. And then it gets me just fired up and doing these like donuts of trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense to me, but also trying to understand that someone on the other side of the conversation, I probably sound nonsensical to them. And it's a very difficult, like, in circumstances in which I've been at a table full of women who are on opposite sides of this conversation. It's been really nice when it doesn't get heated, but it's very hard for it not to get heated because it feels so personal. But it's just,
it just feels like someone's selling you out. And I don't know when you are on the other side of this issue, I kind of don't understand why you think you're exempt from being in a place where you might need this care.
yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of hubris and a lot of privilege to say, well, it's wrong, until it's you, until it's you and you have an ectopic pregnancy, until it's you and something happens where maybe the person you're married to takes a turn and becomes a terrible person. Who knew? And you find yourself pregnant and you don't want to be pregnant with an abuser. Do you know how many calls we got during COVID of people saying, I am quarantined with somebody who is harming me and I'm pregnant. Can you please help me? So many calls, people just trapped. And so I think that if you don't even worry about somebody else's shoes. They're not yours. And you maybe will never be in them, but maybe you will. But just like back off because to advocate for someone else, to have control over someone else's life when you have no responsibility for it it's gross to me.
Is there a part of you that I feel like I keep hearing that like birth rates are down? You know what I mean? And this is also because I love like celebrity gossip and like Nick Cannon is having a bunch of kids and like that's his stance.
His birth rate is not down. His birth rate is not down.
Elon Musk, their birth rates
are making up for it. Yeah, they're just everybody.
But do you feel like this is like some sort of like all of a sudden my brain starts going like, oh my God, like we keep saying like it's like The Handmaid's Tale. I'm like, is this all of a sudden like this forced birth? Like birth rates are going down. More laws are coming up of like more forced birth laws are coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like they're looking at the level of whiteness going down. And that scares people when it's like white people, everybody's making choices about how to control birth. Because the truth is, it's also the way we talk about birth control is also kind of rooted a little bit in racism, right? Somebody with 9 kids who's white, people are like, oh, look at you. You got a little brood. How cute you are. You have all these kids. That's awesome. If a person of color has 9 kids, there's all sorts of disparity around it. And so when we talk about birth control and how and what kind of parenting and what kind of families people want to have, why aren't we supporting people who would like to have a large family but don't have the means to? That's my whole thing. It's just like, if this country was actually cared, we would honor and value all pregnancy outcomes so that if a 16-year-old had a moral life that said, I'm pregnant and I would like to parent this child because that is the morality that I bring. Society should say, let's help you do that. Let's help you raise a healthy child. Conversely, if a 35-year-old person is like, I can't have another kid, I'd like to support them in their abortion,
Yeah.
but we don't have that.
No.
And
As
until
someone who
we
watched
do,
a lot of Teen Mom and Teen Mom 2, that is not something, there is no support.
No.
Not even MTV was really supporting all that much.
Oh my God, no. And so until we have that, we need to sort of shut our collective societal yaps about people's business because we really don't care. We really don't care.
Yeah. And that's the part that gets you fired up again. And I do want to say, in regards to MTV and to the mothers and parents on Teen Mom and Teen Mom 2, I have the utmost respect for like all of the journeys that they ended up going on. I can't imagine their experiences, and then on TV at like baby young ages. And MTV did contribute to, there was like a rise in awareness of sexual health, lower teen pregnancy rates. So that, so all those good things. I'm not trying to disparage some of the good things that did come from open discussions that a lot of people weren't talking about in that realm.
Right.
I just felt like I needed to say that. But as far as what is up next for you guys at Abortion Access Front, is there anything else coming up that we can support besides making sure we're paying attention to what's going on in our states?
I mean, you can always donate. That's always good.
That, yep.
At aafront.org. I think that we are right now getting together our plans and summertime is a little hard. So what we do is strategize a lot as we get into spring and summer. So some issue areas that we're looking at is growing Operation Save Abortion and really getting people hooked up with the places that they can work on the ground, which is awesome. We're slowly going back out on the road. We do, part of our bread and butter is doing comedy and music shows that incorporate the clinics and the activists in those communities. And then our audience learns about them. And then we have kind of a little mini activist fair within the room where people have tables set up and they can go sign up and they can learn right there. So it's kind of bringing the fun in that. And we're doing one in New York City. We're doing one in Atlanta this summer and in July.
Well, yes, Liz, I'll host one in Nashville. Fine, twist my arm. Add it to the list.
Oh my God, yes.
Add it to the list.
Yes,
no, I'm serious. Let's do it.
Yes.
I already got the venue. Let's do it.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, I would love it so much. Oh my God, yes.
So that will be on the schedule as well to all the listeners.
We're gonna get Nashville going.
Yes.
I'm very excited. And it's great because we do the podcast component. It's like a whole big get together. Let's have some laughs. Let's hear some news. Let's make some noise. Let's learn what we can do to fight back and get people activated. And then we're also doing a campaign, which a lot of people don't know about, which I should totally come back on your show and talk about in its totality, which are something called anti-abortion fake clinics. And the anti-abortion movement has well-funded these clinics that look like abortion clinics, but they're not run by doctors. They're run by religious people who literally wear lab coats and dress up like doctors and give people ultrasounds, and they're not doctors. And then they lie to them about their gestational age, and they don't help them with their pregnancies. Their whole goal is to try to talk someone out of having an abortion, and they're very deceptive. So we have a great website called Expose Fake Clinics where you can learn all about them. And we're getting people involved in trying to say to their legislators. And in Tennessee, your governor tried to give $125 million to these fake clinics.
Sounds about right.
Instead of helping
cool,
folks.
Bill. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, Bill.
Good job, Bill. You're great.
Thanks,
You're
Lee.
just doing awesome. Billy, it's great. Instead of helping folks get on TANF, get jobs programs, helping people who are already parenting with what they can do, it's throwing money into this. So it's a mess. And so we're doing all kinds of fun little programs like that. And then occasionally taking to the streets. And we just have a lot going on. And so I would say, go to operationsaveabortion.com, go to aafront.org, follow our socials because we're always giving tips. We have a great program called Adopt a Clinic where you can go see what needs clinics have and you can get together again. If you want to pool some money together with your friends, see what some clinics are, a lot of clinics give diapers to already parenting people who are doing things. A lot of clinics need new heating pads and they need a lot of like stuff. And so you can be helpful in helping these clinics with their little wish lists. And so that's also a really good way to get involved. So tons of stuff to
Now,
do.
I know you've met so many people whenever you're on tour and with all your work that you do. Is there something like a moment that sticks out in recent years of someone who came up to you? I'm sure so many people come up and you just vulnerable, like you just get like a vulnerability dump quite often, like,
Yeah.
and in a beautiful way, but I'm sure it can be beautiful and overwhelming at times. But is there someone who came and shared a story with you recently or in recent years that just stuck with you, that just reminds you of the importance of the work that you're doing and gives you that hope to hold on to?
There's two stories. One was from, I get a lot of people who, when we talk about abortion, or I tell my own abortion story. But I had one person say, when I went away to college, it was the first time I'd lived away from home, and I got pregnant and I didn't know what to do. And I read your book because I saw it in an airport, and I picked it up and I read your book, and you talked about your abortion in it, and I didn't feel alone. And it's the first time I didn't feel alone. And that was really incredible. So the power of storytelling is just huge. If you can share your story with people, please do. And then I had a doctor who was at one of our shows that we did. And after the conversation and after the show, he came up to me and said, this is really valuable because the one thing that I don't think a lot of people understand about abortion doctors is that from the time someone is pregnant until the time they get to me to have their procedure, oftentimes I'm the first person that's been kind to them on that journey. And so to be able to be that person for them is really important. And it's the most important part of my job. And I was like, wow, we don't think about what someone struggles with a lot of times when they find themselves in that pregnancy position. And so that was really touching for me to just be reminded that everyone's journey is different and everyone is struggling with so many different navigational hurdles when it comes to doing this. And that's why we should be kind to people who are pregnant and can't be and don't want to be.
Yeah. It was something that really stuck with me the last time we spoke is I was always apprehensive of like, well, abortion, we don't, I'm not trying to say it's a big, and hearing you just say, yeah, like I'm pro-abortion and that abortion is not a bad word. It is a life-saving word. It is it's healthcare. It is, and so it's just really stuck with me. And the way that I speak about it now is just feeling a whole new understanding of just saying, yeah, I am pro-abortion and really understanding what that means in a very.
And and once you start saying it, it feels very comfortable to say. And when when you run into people who are taken aback by it, it gives you the opportunity then to say, here's why I say it. A miscarriage is medically called a spontaneous abortion. It's like, it just is. So, it's a lot of people are having them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. Well, before I let you out or let you out, I boxed you into this.
I'm in the cage. She's got me trapped. You can't see this, but I'm sweating. I haven't eaten in days. I'm dirty.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you 5 last questions. It's just a little word association sentence. The sentence cool down from our conversation. So,
Sure.
Liz, tell me something that you like.
There's a lot of things I like. Succession right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, something that you know.
Every state capital.
Really? Is it like a song? Like, do you know it by song or you just can list them?
I just learned it.
Like recently or as a child and it's just stuck with you?
No, as a child and I just retained it.
That's your chopsticks.
That's my chopsticks.
Okay. And something that you hate.
Unbridled cruelty.
Something that you love. That's not family, not friends, just something that you love.
My dog.
And a quirky little fact about you.
A quirky fact about me is I was the MC for all of the dancers for the movie Purple Rain. So I worked at First Avenue, the nightclub, for years. And so when they had the dancers auditioning, I was running through and bringing them on and bringing them off. And yeah, it was crazy.
Oh my gosh. I'm very excited to now it makes me just want to watch it tonight. Oh my goodness. Liz,
Yeah.
it is so good to see you. Thank you.
Candice, so good to see you. And I'm
for all
taking
that
you up
do.
on Nashville.
I'm
Let's do
serious.
some fun.
Let's do it. Rock and roll.
I'm very
Coming at
excited.
you
And we'll
this
get
summer.
Cheryl. We'll get Cheryl to do it
Yes,
too.
perfect. Done and done. Done and done. Liz, thank you for your work. Boots on the ground. Really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about Abortion Access Front, just go to aafront.org. Abortion Access Front, the website has plenty of opportunities so that you can learn, you can educate yourself, but also so you can realize different ways on how you can get involved so you don't feel alone in this fight for reproductive rights. You can also learn on what you can do to get involved locally within your state, since right now it's all happening within a state level. So highly, highly recommend checking out aafront.org. And thank you so much for joining us within this conversation. Take care of yourselves. This has been a Superbloom podcast, hosted by me, Candice King, produced by Melissa D. Montz and Diamond Imprint Productions, and advertisement partnerships with Acast.